guys, welcome back to Honey Now Reacts. And today I'm gonna be watching Square One, Michael Jackson, the full documentary. It's by Maple Road Docs. So from the details in the description, it says Square One is a documentary that investigates the first ever 1993 allegations against Michael Jackson. It strategically uncovers new evidence and information through interviews with people closest to the case. These interviews showcase a never-before-heard public statements from witnesses, Michael Jackson's nephew, and legal assistant to the prosecutor in 1993. So we're gonna be able to see that whole case, how it came about. I've read little bits and pieces just from the comments, but I don't really know much about it. But we're just gonna get into it now, starting in 3, 2, 1. Oh, just another note, this was a Patreon request. Paolo, shout out to Paolo for this request. And so let's just begin. 3, 2, 1. On August 17, 1993, the Los Angeles Police Department opened an investigation against Michael Jackson based on an allegation that he molested a 13-year-old named Jordan Chandler. On January 25th, 1994, Michael Jackson settled the civil lawsuit with Chandler's for $15 million. The settlement had left Mr. Jackson open to similar suits. Oh, wow. Jordan Chandler has never publicly spoken about the allegations. Publicly. So in private he did? 2001.
I came to New York to attend NYU to study music business. You know, I came to New York University to study music business, and part of the reason that I was so interested in music business was because I'd been such a big fan of Michael Jackson. Not only of his music and his dance and all that, which is incredible, but also of his business acumen. So I was wearing a Jackson's Victory Tour t-shirt, and it was vintage. I just bought it in the Village. And a young man came up to me and told me that he liked my shirt, and that young man turned out to be Jordan Chandler.
Oh.
They've never been consistent. They've always turned out to be perjurers and people who are just looking for a payout.
He was also the target of intensive FBI scrutiny.
Charles, I have also read that you have extensively studied the Michael Jackson FBI files. What are the findings of the FBI files at Neverland?
No child porn was ever found at Neverland, and for over a decade, the FBI was intermittently involved in investigating Michael Jackson with their investigations, but nonetheless, the files tell us that more than 20 different FBI departments investigated Michael Jackson at one time or another, and none of them found any evidence of any wrongdoing. Perhaps the most compelling piece of information that came out of those files was when the prosecutors in the 2003-5 Arvizo case sent away all of the computers that they seized from Neverland for FBI analysis, and the FBI was unable to find anything incriminating on a single one of them.
2 Jahren im Interview gesagt, es hätte seinem Sohn nicht geschadet und Eltern sollten ihre Kinder ruhig öfter schlagen, und immerhin hätte er seinen Sohn so geschlagen, dass er jetzt eben die Nummer 1 im Pop-Business gewesen wäre. Vor diesem Vater hat er Angst gehabt. Auf der anderen Seite hat Kind und Vater in einer Person, und das, was er mit den Kindern macht, macht er eigentlich mit sich selber. Also im Herzen eigentlich ein ganz reiner, ein ganz guter, ein ganz gutmütiger, ein ganz naiver Mensch.
Someone who is always trying to dispute that notion is a man named Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente, to this day, believes that Michael Jackson does fit the profile of a pedophile, and that Michael Jackson did have child porn at Neverland.
They also found images, and I think they were of a photo shoot with Michael Jackson's nephew, still a teenager. And there's a picture that's on the internet that it's a picture of Michael. Can you see that?
Oh my, yes, yes.
So there are pictures in this series where he's actually grabbing that cloth and trying to rip it off him, laughing and joking and trying to get him naked. And he's virtually naked in this picture. Old man. And why is he posing in a picture where Michael's shirt is open, exposing his chest, and this kid's chest, I mean, he's
basically naked.
upper body.
My name is Taj Jackson. I'm the
this is
nephew
him.
of Michael Jackson. And we had them retract that because that's not what they were. They were for an album. They're for a single cover. Why? We wanted to do something edgy for our Y photo shoot. We wanted the guys and the girls, and we thought we were too cute, you know, 3T, like too saccharine, and we wanted to have some edge. I was involved in it. You know, was my younger brother, TJ. If he was here, he'd be even probably more upset than I am right now. Like, it's implied that TJ was clueless or TJ didn't know what was going on. TJ was very aware of what's going on. TJ wanted him to go farther. I was uncomfortable taking off my shirt, and so I didn't have to take off my shirt. It was never like he said, no, you take off your shirt and you do this and that. It was whatever we wanted to do. That photo shoot was a great memory for me, and to hear someone try and dirty it up in that way, the way they're trying to twist it as if my uncle came and said, hey, I'm just going to start ripping off clothes. That's farthest from the truth.
He trusted a lot of people he shouldn't have trusted in his life.
Is that, you know, they go, oh, you slept in the same bedroom as him. It's like, I don't think you understand. Michael Jackson's bedroom is 2 stories. And it has like 3 bathrooms and this and that. So
before he had to go, he told us that we could stay and that we could enjoy Neverland as much as we wanted. While the ranch manager took us to the main house, he told me that Michael had said to give us the royal treatment.
Aww.
And we sure got the royal treatment. When we went up to the main house, all the staff were lined up on the stairs welcoming us, and they told us that we could move around as freely as we wanted to. There were no places that were off limits.
And this was 16 years ago, so it's been a while, but I just remember like being completely in shock the whole time.
Suddenly realized that he was in fact the first accuser from 1993.
Okay, so that's when she met him, 2001, right? Okay.
The 93 case is very interesting because it's the only case that didn't go to court. Juan had a child named Jordan Chandler who turns out to be the first alleged victim. June Chandler divorced Evan Chandler and married a man named David Schwartz.
On the film Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks film.
Oh, I didn't know they had a live action Robin Hood, y'all.
Apparently he was working on Mel Brooks when he came up with the Men in Tights idea, or he said his son came up with the Men in Tights idea. This is the same 13-year-old boy. And apparently, maybe Mel was under some kind of ether or anesthetic, but he decided it was a great idea and went along with the dentist, and they put the movie together. I would imagine a dentist to the stars would be exposed to a lot of the glamour in Hollywood. He can see his successful customers talking on the phone, making deals, and it looks so easy to someone on the outside, you know? And he figured he wanted to get a little piece of the pie. And
Rent-A-Wreck is owned by Dave Schwartz, and so Dave Schwartz calls his wife June because he knows that Jordan Chandler is a massive Michael Jackson fan. There was one employee at Rent-A-Wreck who said that when June arrived, she was kind of forcing Geordie on Michael Jackson, almost like trying to emotionally blackmail him. And so that's how the numbers got exchanged, and they ended up staying in touch.
So a friendship develops between Michael Jackson and the Chandler family, excluding Evan Chandler. During this period, Michael Jackson would have stayovers at their house. They would come over and sleep over at Michael Jackson's house.
Had his own new family, a bit like June did. He'd remarried and had kids with another lady. And they were struggling to get Evan to engage with Geordie. It was not until he discovered that his son was now friends with Michael Jackson that he suddenly became interested in seeing him again.
And that's how it leads to May of 1993. That is when Michael Jackson first meets Evan Chandler.
Evan had begun making strange comments and threats to June and Dave and Geordie about Michael, that he was going to make allegations. He was behaving so erratically that they feared he was going to do something crazy. So the next time they spoke to him on the phone, they tape recorded him.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not believe it. He will not believe what's going to happen to him. Beyond his worst nightmares. Sell one more record. If I go through with this, I win big time. I will get everything I want. They will be destroyed forever.
He's talking about how he's furious that Michael has stopped phoning him and stopped taking his calls, and how Michael has stolen his ex-wife and torn the family apart, and how he's plotting his revenge, and he says everything is moving in accordance with a plan that's not just mine.
And this telephone conversation occurred before Jordan Chandler made any allegations against Michael Jackson.
I was the only legal secretary for him. He was really an entertainment attorney, and he had a history of being a good negotiator in the entertainment field, though. Whenever Evan would call Barry Rothman's office, Barry Rothman would tell us to put the call on hold, and he'd walk all the way back to his office, shut the door, and that's how he took all of Evan's calls. He was the only client he did that for. Anybody else call, if he was away from his office, he'd just pick up the phone and say, okay, woo, say what he had to say, and then he'd hang up. But he didn't do that with Evan. Evan was always behind closed doors.
Evan had already retained a lawyer. Geordie Chandler was insisting that Michael had never touched him. Anthony Pellicano, who was Michael's private investigator, Pellicano goes round to interview Geordie Chandler and questions him for about an hour, I believe, and asks him all sorts of pointed and very direct questions. Have you ever seen Michael Jackson naked? Have you ever been naked in bed with Michael Jackson? Has he ever touched you, etc., etc.? And Geordie Chandler says no to every...
He kept them. He never brought them back. And during that time that he had him, he came into my office, and he was behind closed doors with my attorney. The Geordie Chandler was. I actually opened up the door one day. I was leaving, and I opened up the door, and Geordie was in the back, and he kind of looked a little startled because I looked and I saw him, and I was like, nobody in the office knew that he was even there. We were like, how did he even get here? And I opened up the door. So I had a few encounters with Geordie Chandler coming into the office, and to me, it just looked like a coaching session.
While Geordie was in Evan's custody, Evan sedated him with a drug called sodium amytal.
Evan Chandler makes a phone call to David Schwartz talking about he is going to make allegations against Michael Jackson. Jordan Chandler denies all allegations. Evan Chandler gets custody of Jordan Chandler and never returns them. It was supposed to be only for a week. And during this period that Evan Chandler had Jordan Chandler, there were numerous unethical methods that we know of being used against Jordan Chandler, notably the use of sodium amytal and the coaching, the one-on-one coaching between Jordan Chandler and Barry Rothman. So by the end of Jordan's stay, he changes his story. He went into Evan's custody saying that he wasn't abused by Michael Jackson, to now claiming that, yes, in fact, I have been abused. So Charles, with this new shocking statement by Jordan Chandler, what are Evan Chandler's next moves?
So after Geordie changes his story, Evan, instead of going straight to the police as you would expect a parent to do if their child had said that they'd been sexually abused by a man, he instead goes directly to Michael Jackson and his legal team and starts demanding $20 million.
But Evan had a desire to be a filmmaker, superstar. He's stolen my son's affection. And so Michael just simply said,
this will be a great opportunity for you and Geordie to reconnect because you'll be able to write them together. Rothman come back and say, you're nowhere near what we're asking for. That's less than $2 million. We're not going for that.
The next offer that comes in from Jackson's camp is one single payment of $350,000. This amount shocked Barry Rothman because it was even lower than their first offer. So by now, Chandler and Rothman figured out that Jackson Camp was not serious about negotiating. So Evan Chandler suggests that he is willing to take the original $1 million deal. Pellicano responds, that's never going to happen.
Meanwhile, the custody situation happens between Evan and June.
But what happened was June filed an ex parte motion. An ex parte motion means show up in court the next day. She was trying to get him back now. And so we typed a little declaration and they went to court. They went to court on the ex parte. But see, he had been negotiating with Michael for a whole month for the $20 million to make the movie. He goes to court on a hearing for the custody. A family law judge, he said nothing to that judge about his suspicion or my child is, I think my child is, being molested. He didn't say anything. So the judge ordered him to return Jordy back instantly.
And in order to maintain custody, Evan has to go to the psychiatrist and have Jordy disclose.
I can promise you 3 days later is when we got the breaking news. So he never took him back. He took him to the doctor that he had already queried about molestation.
He sort of acts out of haste and goes and triggers the criminal proceedings as a knee-jerk reaction to the custody situation. And then that means that he loses control of the situation and the negotiations cease because now the police are involved.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Good evening. Michael Jackson is in Bangkok, Thailand tonight, where he has now postponed 2 concerts, claiming that he is ill.
Thing that looked like a scoop or a scandal or looked like it might bag them ratings, they just ran with it.
We will fly stories. We will take a shred of fact and go with it like a great footballer with a ball. We will spin down the field with that and try and score a goal with it. And maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we'll take a shred of evidence and try and turn it into a story.
I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions.
$20,000, $50,000, $100,000 to anybody that was prepared to say, I have met Michael Jackson and I've got something bad to say about him.
Yeah, a friend of mine told National Enquiry that he knew some family that knew the Jacksons. Up or touched them in any kind of way. If he did, we got $200,000 for you. I said, huh? He said, you show what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna draw a check up, a contract up, and I'm gonna show you, we're finna give you $200,000.
So then you go to Germany, you get another 20,000. You go to Italy, another 20,000. Before you know it, you're up $200,000, and that is enough for a family to come forward and talk.
It happened repeatedly where people of dubious... LaToya Jackson at the time was married to a man called Jack Gordon, who was involved with Genevieve's mafia. He was a very disturbed character, violent and abusive. Pimped LaToya out like a prostitute. He forced her to do semi-pornographic magazine shoots, that kind of thing. And if she disagreed with him or refused to do anything that he told her to, then he would either beat her or threaten to have members of her family killed.
This went on for many years. And
he literally said, I'm going to kill you, your brother, everybody.
Yes. No, not everybody. Just myself.
And Michael.
Michael and Jan.
This is not some excuse which has been dreamed up subsequently. This was known and reported at the time.
He grabbed a bedspread, he put it over her head, started to strangle her with it. At the same time, he grabbed her arm and started to twist it so badly.
And so all of a sudden, LaToya, who had previously been speaking out in favor of Michael, suddenly U-turned and started selling interviews claiming that her brother, in fact, was guilty.
Honest, he was very nice, always very polite. He would always carry a guitar around with him. He made his own music. He would describe it as pop R&B like Michael Jackson. I remember that because he said it many times.
Lupus is an autoimmune disease, as you said, where the immune system, one of our larger systems that's designed to protect us against germs and viruses, actually attacks our own body cells and tissues. Many patients with lupus have vitiligo, but he had a form of skin lupus called discoid lupus, which affects about 40% of the patients with lupus, and you do get depigmentation.
So Michael Jackson suffered from a skin disease called vitiligo. He was accused throughout his career for decades by the media of deliberately bleaching his skin.
Because you don't like being black?
He insisted throughout his life that he suffered from vitiligo.
I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help.
In fact, when he passed away, his autopsy report confirmed that he suffered from vitiligo. Now, vitiligo is a disease which attacks the pigment in the skin. And what it does, it turns your skin a very, very pale white color, almost translucent, and it makes it very sensitive to the sun.
Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body in evidence of a skin color disorder called vitiligo, which I have previously spoken about. The warrant also directed me to cooperate in any examination of my body by their physician to determine the condition of my skin, including whether I have vitiligo or any other skin disorder.
The book by Evan Chandler's brother Ray, where he quotes Evan as having a discussion with his lawyer, Larry Feldman, and they're talking about the vitiligo situation. They've told the Chandlers that Michael has a skin condition called vitiligo, and that this skin condition can constantly change the way that your body looks because it's constantly attacking the pigment. And so the district attorney has told the Chandlers that this is great for them, because if Jordan Chandler's description matches, then it matches. But if it doesn't match, then they can say, oh, well, that's because of the vitiligo. So Larry Feldman says, either way, we win.
So after they searched Michael Jackson's body, no arrest warrant was issued. Charles, what were the initial reports about this body search?
In early '94, law enforcement sources tell two different media outlets, Reuters and USA Today, that there is no match.
Jordan Chandler's drawing of Michael Jackson's genitalia have since been leaked. And when you really look at it with words such as my theory and be selective, it's questionable whether these are truly Jordan's own descriptions or instructions from someone else.
Chandler a description of Michael Jackson's genitals. Geordie Chandler tells Lyndon that Michael Jackson is circumcised. When they conduct the body search, it turns out that Michael Jackson is in fact not circumcised, meaning that his description has not matched.
Is ready for a criminal case.
To make a charge against the celebrity.
Gloria Allred is shortly fired, and Barry Rothman, who's now working in the background, offers Larry Feldman as a replacement, an attorney who is willing to push for a civil case. Charles, what is the difference between a civil case and a criminal case?
For anyone that's listening that doesn't know the difference, a civil case is where you sue somebody and that's for money, and a criminal case is brought by the state, the government, and that is a case where if you're convicted, then you go to prison. So that they're two very separate processes. What happens is that the criminal case stalls because they can't find any evidence to suggest that Michael's done anything wrong. So they raid his house, they don't find anything incriminating. They raid his family home, they don't find anything incriminating. They raid his doctor's offices, they don't find anything incriminating. Of course, you've got a boy at the center of the case who at first said he wasn't molested, then changed his mind and said he was molested, and only changed his mind after being given sodium amytal. So then they go off looking for other victims and they can't find any.
In fact, if anybody wants to go back to 1993 when I was interviewed by the Santa Barbara Police Department, I sat there and I gave them the names. They're on record. They have all of this information, but they were scanning Michael Jackson. All they cared about was trying to find something on Michael Jackson, who Michael was innocent. And that was what the interview was about with the police in 1993. I told them he is not that guy. And they said, well, maybe you just don't understand your friend. And I said, no, I know the difference between pedophiles and somebody who's not a pedophile because I've been molested. Here's the names. Go investigate.
And so the criminal case is basically going nowhere. And meanwhile, the civil case is moving through the court system at the usual speed. So the judge in October of 1993 orders depositions. Now, a deposition is where you are forced to state your case, to give your evidence under oath. It can be done in court, or it can be done under oath elsewhere, an audio taped or videotaped case. And you are forced to give away your defense. Then what that does, it gives the prosecutors a front row seat for your defense. They can then go away and tailor their criminal case to circumvent your defense case. So, for example, if you say, I have an alibi in the civil case, then the prosecutors can go away and tailor their criminal case where they change all the dates and they can just change their case to get around it. If you have a witness, they go and discredit that witness, or they put it on a day when that witness was not there. They just take out your defense chunk by chunk. So by the time you come into a criminal court, where your life is on the line, your freedom, rather than your bank balance, you have no defense. So
This was going because normally the criminal case has to take precedence over the civil case. He shouldn't have won on that one because constitutionally that went against Michael's constitutional right. That tells an attorney, maybe we need to settle this because he's not ruling in our favor right now.
And so on the eve of literally the night before, he would have been forced to give away his defense under oath.
And he convinced the insurance company to pay the settlement. When Michael settled the case, the judge, they made him drop his extortion claim. So the real story hasn't been told. The real story is that Michael Jackson was the victim of an elaborate extortion scheme that launched the false allegation.
I mean, I wondered why they said, sorry, let me just pause it here. This is the only pause I'll make, but I wondered why they had gone for the settlement, but now it makes sense. Like the lady said, the criminal case should supersede the civil case, but it seems like the judge was not in the favor of Michael, and so wanted to put the civil case before the criminal case, basically damning him and making any defense that he makes pointless, because they're just going to use that against him, and then he will end up in the criminal case. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so from what I understand, so the insurance is the one that covered the $15 million in that settlement. Okay.
Announcing the settlement, Larry Feldman specifically denies that this will have any impact on the criminal case.
Has Michael Jackson bought your client's silence?
I am not going to have anything to do with talking about the terms of the settlement, and nobody's bought anyone's silence.
A civil case is only about money. If they, and I tell people this too, we're in a state where they could have went after him criminally and came back after the money. All they wanted, a lot of people think because he settled the civil case that voided the criminal. That's not true. It did not void the criminal. The reason they never came after him criminally in '93 because they couldn't find any corroborating evidence to agree with Jordy Chandler's story. As a matter of fact, they found out that the description he gave of Michael's body was not accurate. If that was accurate, that was corroborating.
As of summer 1994, the prosecution is running a grand jury long after the settlement and calls witnesses to the grand jury and questions them about whether Michael Jackson could have had plastic surgery to his penis to avoid a match. Now, why would they be doing that? Why would they be calling witnesses and asking those questions if in fact the photographs had matched?
Stands for North American Men Boys Love Association. So it's basically a pro-pedophile group.
Tell us about you infiltrating this group.
Actually, the infiltration was fairly easy. They had a website. I paid $35. I joined the group.
So at this meeting, he overhears conversations talking about how it would be great if Michael Jackson was a pedophile. Because if Michael Jackson is a pedophile, that makes it easier for societies to accept pedophilia as a whole. So after this NAMBLA conference, after this 1986 conference, it becomes Victor Gutierrez's mission to prove that Michael Jackson is a pedophile. He starts befriending Michael Jackson's maids, former employees, Michael Jackson's former employees, such as his maids, Blanca Francia and Adria McManus, notable ones, to sell their stories to tabloids. In 1996, Victor Gutierrez wrote a book titled Michael Jackson Was My Lover, a book that glorified pedophilia through the relationship between Michael Jackson and Jordan Chandler.
Oh my God.
The Chandler family has since dismissed Victor Gutierrez's book as pure fiction, The Chandlers, Raymond Chandler, released a book in 2004 titled All That Glitters. Many instances of consistent storytelling between the two books, especially from Evan's point of view. At times, the stories are even word for word the same. Truthfully speaking, the only differences between the two books are the supposed sexual acts between Michael Jackson and Jordan Chandler. Now, when you look at some of these parallel stories even deeper, Gutierrez's book, which preceded the Chandler's book by 7 years, even sources some stories directly to Evan. Victor Gutierrez, a man who has an agenda for pushing Michael Jackson as a pedophile, a man who had coached people to lie against Michael Jackson, was in fact connected to Evan Chandler, the father of the first accuser.
We've gotten a constant stream of calls and letters from people making dubious claims about the singer. Frankly, we ignore most of them. But when I heard the facts of this story, I just had to go to Canada and check it out myself.
Journalist Diane Diamond got a tip from her source that a child had been molested by Michael Jackson. This child lived in Toronto, so she flew to Toronto with authorities to interview the boy.
And I'd like to make a confession about something that happened between me and Michael Jackson.
And this child proceeded to tell wild stories with vivid details.
Like, he started just touching like our stomach and things, like he'd rub our stomach and then he'd get lower and then his eyes are big and they're dark, the cavern, and like the sockets to go right in, you know?
We showed the boy several photographs. Some of them were of Neverland employees, and he was able to identify each and every one of them.
Yeah, that's him. The way he looks, that's him.
I found him fairly believable too.
During police interviews, the child broke down and confirmed that he had been coached. At the end, it turned out he was coached by Rodney Allen.
About Neverland, about Havenhurst, about Disneyland, about Michael Jackson's body. Where did he get all that information?
He got it from me.
This kid is a A1, #1 liar.
Professional.
Rodney Allen is currently serving a life sentence in a Canadian prison for pedophilia. Was floating around the internet that was said to be written by Rodney Allen, but no one took it seriously at the time because there were no evidence to who authored the post. Paula sent this blog post to Rodney Allen, and Rodney Allen has since confirmed that he in fact did write this confession. And in the confession, this is what he talked about in regards to the Jordan Chandler case.
They set up that plan together.
This obviously doesn't prove anything concrete, but it's still interesting that Rodney Allen, a man who was connected to Victor Gutierrez, a man who has a history of coaching kids to lie against Michael Jackson, had that to say.
The King of Pop chalks up a big win. A jury has awarded Michael Jackson a whopping $2.7 million for a defamation lawsuit he filed against freelance writer Victor Gutierrez. Gutierrez claimed on a tabloid TV show that he'd seen a video of Jackson having sex with a boy.
This guy made it up out of thin air, maliciously to hurt Michael, and he told anybody and everybody who would listen. When it came time to prove it in this court, he couldn't prove it.
He fled the country and filed for bankruptcy, y'all.
Years later, in the early 2000s, Victor Gutierrez again started spreading rumors regarding sexual abuse, this time around the involvement of politicians in Chile. A boy claimed he participated in these sexual activities and was able to describe stories with vivid details. It was later proven in court that the boy had never met this politician. While questioned, the boy could not even remember the politician's name. It had to be prompted by Victor Gutierrez off camera. It was later discovered that Gutierrez had paid this child around 10 to 20,000 pesos. There were no other witnesses nor proof, just the words of a boy who were connected to Victor Gutierrez, the same man who was connected to Evan Chandler.
Evan Chandler is a horrible man. Like, that's a known person too. That's so sick. And you worked with him.
And we also weren't, and I've been very transparent, we weren't best friends. We weren't very close. I kept, him at arm's length because I knew who he was, and I didn't really know how to deal with that. And he was very close with, I remember one other person in the program who also was sort of like a pop R&B guy. I believe he did production, and he also was a big Michael Jackson fan. So I mean, when I think about the people in the program that I saw him with, the people that he did surround himself with were people who were Michael Jackson fans. I was told that at a party, Jordan, played all of Michael's music, danced like him, did all of his moves, and that his apartment was almost sort of a shrine to Michael, that there was a lot of different like fan memorabilia.
That's not really something someone would do, if they had bad memories about a person.
It doesn't surprise me that people are scared to come out because, I have some flexibility. I work for myself. If I were in a corporate job, I might be scared too, because we don't really know who the powers that be are behind Leaving Neverland, and to speak out at this point, it might cause a conflict of interest for somebody if they're working with a big corporation. It could really harm their career. So I'm not surprised that people would be afraid to come out.
So after the settlement, Michael is married to Lisa Marie Presley and goes to work on an album called History.
At a warehouse in London, staff listened to the long-awaited new songs today as they wrapped them ready to go on sale tomorrow. The album, called History, contains 15 old hits and 15 new songs.
And much of the content of the History album, you could argue, of course, all art is subject to interpretation, but it seems to be quite clearly influenced by what has happened to him during the Geordie Chandler legal situation. And also, once married to Lisa Marie Presley.
Nothing that matched me to those charges.
There was nothing. There was nothing that concurred.
That's why I'm sitting here talking to you today. There was not one iota of information that was found that could connect me.
So when we've heard that there was a marking of some.
Now, the combination of the album and the Diane Sawyer interview sends Evan Chandler into a rage, and he claims that Michael Jackson has breached the non-disclosure part of the settlement agreement.
Guys,
so he files papers, and the remedy that he's seeking in this lawsuit is he wants $60 million.
There, but he did say multiple times that he was not close to his family and that he felt that he was used by them.
That's what it feels like too.
I'm sure most of you are aware of the recent television special that claimed to give an honest, candid, and revealing look into the private life of one of the world's most successful and controversial celebrities, Michael Jackson. The revelations were explosive. The ratings were enormous. But what TV journalist Martin Bashir presented was a twisted and edited construction of scandal and innuendo, not a true representation of the interviews that actually took place.
When Living with Michael Jackson was released, it reignited the discussion about whether or not Michael Jackson was a child molester. The film featured a close-up of Michael holding hands with Gavin Arvizo, who was a cancer victim, who then went on to be the accuser in the 2005 trial. Freaks, these were people who did not have any fondness for Michael Jackson. And I chimed in with my belief that I didn't believe that Michael Jackson was a child molester and that the documentary was misleading and exploited him. During that conversation, Jordan Chandler chimed in and said that he too believed that Michael Jackson wasn't capable of the things he was being accused of, and sort of reaffirmed things that I said in defense of Michael Jackson. And I remember that very first time, I remember catching his eye. It was shocking that he would speak up, and it really affirmed my belief that Michael was innocent.
Oh no, I think you better ask your mother. Oh, we already asked our mother. She says, sure, no problem. I'm like, no, this is something's odd. This is not right. And then as I was about to go tell Gavin that he cannot sleep in Michael's room, Michael says, okay, I have a solution for this. You have to sleep in the room with me. The two children slept on the bed, and Michael and I slept on the floor.
We've filed formal charges, a felony criminal complaint against Mr. Jackson. The felony complaint involves 9 counts. 7 counts of 288A in violation of California Penal Code, commonly known as child molestation.
Thursday, jurors listened as the teen contradicted his brother and sister's testimony and couldn't recall key details of the molestation allegations.
The defense pointed out that in an early police interview, the young accuser said his grandmother had told him about a certain type of sexual act, even though he had testified that Jackson had told him about it.
Yeah, we were on the witness list because when we stayed at Neverland March 9th and 10th, Gavin Arvizo and his brother and sister were with us. And the reason why it was so important, the dates, is because Michael was supposedly abusing him until March 12th, and we were there March 9th and 10th.
Right, so when you were
and that
there...
was not happening.
I don't know where prosecutors go from here. I don't know whether they can prevail and get the convictions that they want against Michael Jackson. Their main witness, the accuser, the alleged victim in the case, the one witness that the jury has to believe for prosecutors to win, just wasn't that believable.
They sought for Jordan to testify.
Because all of this nonsense is being rehashed and relitigated in the media, and it's ridiculous. I understand that people would be skeptical of my story because I am a fan and I don't hide that I'm a fan. But the fact of the matter is, if I had even the slightest doubt that Michael Jackson was innocent, I wouldn't be speaking out. I heard directly from Jordan Chandler that he didn't believe that Michael Jackson was capable of the things he was being accused of. And that's very powerful. Every allegation, in a sense, is built upon the original 1993 allegation. And I believe that if that one is false, which I do believe it is false, all the rest crumble.
According to the Michael Jackson FBI files, Chandler's more forcibly receiving legal by any attempt to make him testify against Jackson. Days of Cooling Trial ended. Jordan was not using to authenticate. Prosecutors stated attempted to introduce Chandler's drawing, citing one mark matching it relative to the city location. Judge Melville dismissed these. On June 13, 2005, Michael Jackson was found not guilty by the jury on all 4 charges. 2008, was sentenced to 61 days in jail, forced to pay 30 million pesos for spreading slander stories against former Miss Universe. On June 25th, 2009, Michael Jackson passed away. On November 2000, rest in peace to him. He committed, on May 1st, 2013, Wade Robson filed the creditor's claim civil suit against the state seeking compensation for lost opportunities as a result of alleged Jackson. May 14, 2013, the city took family business to serve a $24 million lawsuit. Hires lawyers. The lawyers sought for Jordan Chandler's help. They need to leave this boy alone for real. Absent Safecheck's civil lawsuits were both dismissed in 2017. As of 2019, their lawsuits are currently under appeal. In 2019, appeared in a documentary about their alleged abuse. I think that's the one I heard about that was going on. Numerous probable inconsistencies, and Jordan did not participate. According to the United Youth Security, research shows the average. Oh my God, that is. Oh my. That statistic is actually insane. All of them sought monetary compensation. All subsequent accusers have used Chandler's story as a foundation. That was from Raymond Chandler. Wait, who was Raymond Chandler again? Was that the new husband, right? The stepfather? Okay, so like based on all this evidence, I have to say it was like very straightforward. The Danny Wu, the guy who worked on this, he really did a good job of asking like just straight up questions, and really got to the point. I like that we had all the documents to like just support all the statements in there, and to have his very own classmate be able to speak on it. And the fact that all of these cases that came after were using Chandler's as a base and a foundation for their allegations, and just the amount of detail, how much like conniving, scheming that was going on in these groups to slander his name, to get monetary value, which was in case of Evan Chandler. And I would say the whole family, except for Jordan, honestly, that once they realized the money that they could gain from it, I think they just kind of went with it. And then in the case of Gutierrez, that disgusting man, he just wanted to make a sick ass. He thought he could like change the world with it. All he did was further ruin Michael's reputation and make up these lies. And it just makes me sick, because why did him and his group have access to so many kids that they could get them to lie for them? Like what did they threaten them with? It just disgusts me thinking about it. And I'm just surprised that they couldn't just, you know, the FBI was obviously investigating the group. Like, why didn't they ever arrest this man? Why didn't they ever arrest this man if he was so closely linked? Like, why don't you actually go after the people who are actually doing it and you have actual evidence of them being part of this heinous group? And why are they able to like even be a thing? Like, that's just so disgusting, bro. But I like kind of stand by like just the evidence that's been given to me. I just don't believe those allegations at all. It seems as though everything was really orchestrated, and they got what they wanted, which was money. If they were really seeking the truth and justice like the secretary was saying, then they would have gone after it, but they got it with their money. So, and it seems like everybody's trying to kind of gain it in the same way. Like you see how they're kind of following that same kind of thing that the Chandlers were doing to basically get to the point where they could get that money, you know? But I really appreciate the person who suggested this to me. Paolo, shout out to you. If you have any requests, that will be on my Patreon. Patreon requests come first before anything, y'all. But you guys have a nice day, and I'll check you guys out next time. Bye.